What's good, guys? Welcome back to another video. Today I want to break down the tight end and fullback position, but before I do, I just want to say thanks again for 1,000 subscribers. But also, I did announce in yesterday's video that I will be live for every single Dolphins game this year, which obviously starts tomorrow for our first preseason game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So I will be live reacting to that game right here on this YouTube channel. So make sure that you're available, and if you're able to, please join me for that stream. We'll be live tomorrow, so that should be very fun. So yeah, just for the last time, I will be live tomorrow for that game, so if you're able, please join me. With that out of the way, let's get right into this tight end and fullback breakdown video. We'll start with the fullbacks. Just to be completely honest, they're just fullbacks, so there's not really a lot to say here. Lovett is the backup fullback, and he'll either be released or add to the practice squad, so there's not much to say there. And I will also count Cethan as a fullback, just to get him out of the way respectfully, as he is a tight end and fullback, but I just don't see a way he makes this roster. He signed here during the Brian Flores era and was a Brian Flores guy, but even under Brian Flores, he was truly awful, other than special teams. As a tight end or as a fullback, whether he was going on a route or trying to block, he was just really bad. Just truly awful. His poor play and him not being a Mike McDaniel guy makes it a pretty easy release, at least for me. Not to mention, you do actually save $2.5 million with the release if you do choose to release him, but I would release him anyway, so... Okay, now let's get to the guy who will make the team in Alec Ingold. Alec Ingold is the clear #1 fullback and is one of the best fullbacks in all of football. And I almost feel like he's being overlooked because he should play an integral part in this Miami Dolphins offense. I actually tweeted about how I wanted the Miami Dolphins to sign him 6 days before he actually signed, so that was pretty nice to see. He signed a 2-year, $6.5 million deal with the Miami Dolphins just this past offseason. And honestly, for how involved he should be in this offense, that's very tidy work from Chris Grier and Mike McDaniel. Like I said, Alec Ingold is one of the best fullbacks in all of football, but he did just suffer an ACL injury last year, which is probably why we got him for a little bit less, but I still think he should be able to go for game #1. And speaking of how involved Alec Ingold will be, if you watch the San Francisco 49ers offense last year, which Mike McDaniel was the offensive coordinator of that team, you know how integral a fullback was to that offense. And acquiring a fullback who is one of the best at his position was so important and essential for the Dolphins to do this offseason. Kyle Juszczyk actually played 610 snaps last year on offense, and that was around 56% of the offensive snap share. So he's actually on the field more than he was off the field. So that is a little bit of how important fullbacks do play in a Mike McDaniel offense.
It's been extremely impactful. I've been fortunate enough since the year 2005 to be in the same structure offense, and this would be my 7th team. And from the starting point, day one installation had a fullback involved. And one of the advantages of a fullback is that you have a backfield player that can give you different numbers on each side of the center depending on the direction he goes. So if you're in just a normal dot formation, you have 2 eligibles on each side, and then the halfback at home. Well, when you're in the I formation, is it 3-by-1 or is it 2-by-2? That's from a starting point. And you know, it doesn't hurt that a lot of offenses have gone away from that, only because with the historical experience that our staff has had, and myself included, defenses aren't as adept at fitting those types of plays, whether it's runs or passes, and defending against it, which is a competitive advantage when you're able to find a fullback that's, you know, it's just not any ordinary human being, or you must play with a fullback. You have to have an athletic player that is smart and can understand a lot of schemes and can read on the fly. But when that position player plays fast, it can be pretty disruptive to teams that aren't used to going against it.
It's almost like Mike McDaniel knows how important a fullback is to his offense. Alec Ingold should be a guy who does a lot of what Mike McDaniel used to do with Kyle Juszczyk in his offense. Last year, the San Francisco 49ers ranked 7th in rushing yards, but ranked 1st in using 21 personnel, which is usually when you have a tight end and fullback in the game. They had 981 yards out of that formation, averaging around 4.7 yards per carry, so it clearly worked for them, which is why they used the I formation more than most teams in all football last year, which bodes well for Alec Ingold, who was an undrafted free agent back in 2019 when he signed with the Raiders after the draft cycle. With the Raiders, he played in 41 games and started 11 of them, and that's just a little sample to show that injuries have been a little bit of an issue. He's pretty much what you need him to be as a runner, as he won't average a bunch of yards per carry, but he will do well in short yard situations to get that first down, which is so important for this Miami Dolphins team, which if you remember when I went over the running back room, there is no real power back guy, so Alec Ingold can act as that when we need him in those short yardage situations. It's one of those things where the Dolphins do lack a power type running back, and Alec Ingold should be a guy who could look to fill that role. He's probably better in the pass game than he is in the run game, as he had 28 receptions for 239 yards with 3 touchdowns with the Raiders. And while he is better as a pass catcher than a runner, in the blocking game he's very good at both. And while he will play a big role on the field, he's also an incredible human being off the field as well. He's very involved in the community, and he was actually named a captain for the Raiders just last year. And the year before that, in 2020, he was nominated for the Walter Payton Man of the Year award, which is an award for players' commitment to philanthropy and community impact. So he's as great as a person as he is as a football player. He should play a major role in this offense, so I'm very excited to see him in a Miami Dolphins uniform this year. Let's move on to the tight ends now, where it will probably be kind of easy, at least for me, to see who will make the team. But in terms of how they performed in camp and what they've been asked to do, it's pretty much a mystery as of right now. There just hasn't been a lot of clarity with this position, which is very, very curious. I'll start with the most recent news, which was Adam Shaheen being traded to the Texans along with a 7th round pick for a 6th round pick. But unfortunately that trade fell through as Adam Shaheen failed his physical, so he's now back with the team. All this did was confirm what we already knew, which was that Adam Shaheen does not have a future with this team, so he'll either be traded or released in the next few weeks. Tanner Conner is the other tight end who in my mind won't make the team but has performed quite well in camp. And if you watch my video where I covered training camp, which you should definitely do by the way, you know that Tyler was impressed by Tanner Conner and actually sees a future for him with the team. He's a converted wide receiver to tight end, and he's been playing a tight end, H-back, and fullback type of role. And as a young rookie undrafted free agent who we just picked up, I could definitely see him earning a spot on this year's practice squad, just due to his talent and his versatility, and he could be a guy who is called up during the regular season if there is an injury to a tight end or fullback. Now we can get to the 3 guys who I do think will end up being the 3 tight ends for this Miami Dolphins active roster, and we'll start with Hunter Long. And the reason we're starting with Hunter Long is because I believe he's the person we've heard the most about out of training camp, and unfortunately it's not because he's doing great things, which doesn't mean that he's terrible or a bust or anything like that. It just doesn't make me feel great about the potential of him breaking out this year. He was drafted with the 81st pick in the 3rd round of last year's 2021 NFL draft.
With the 81st pick in the 2021 NFL draft, the Miami Dolphins select Hunter Long, tight end, Boston College.
It's probably a little bit of a surprising selection because you probably thought that the Miami Dolphins had bigger needs, but I can respect the front office for going with the best player available, or at least in this case who they thought was the best player available. Hunter Long was drafted out of Boston College as a receiving type tight end with some speed and some ball skills, but nothing else really to write home about, as he's not that great as a blocker, specifically as a run blocker. However, he does actually have the traits to become one, it's just a matter if he actually goes out and does it. He's 6'5", 253 pounds, and he can make some tough catches, and he can attack a seam, but he is a little bit inconsistent with that tough catch ability. And like I said before, he clearly needs help as a blocker and needs that to develop, so hopefully he's working with tight end coach John Embree as we speak. Blocking as a tight end in this scheme is so vital and so important that he will need to learn how to be physical and aggressive while blocking to really thrive with this team. He didn't play much last year, only being active for 7 games and only making 1 catch. So as of right now, he's still more of a developmental player, but he will probably easily play way more than he did last year. But he will probably remain as the tight end in that number 3 spot in the depth chart, but that will depend on how much he develops in this scheme throughout the year. Durham Smythe is actually a guy who, unlike his counterparts, is a clear scheme fit for this Mike McDaniel wide zone system. He was just re-signed by the Miami Dolphins on a 2-year deal worth $7 million, which is his 2nd contract after his rookie deal when he was drafted with the 123rd pick in the 2018 NFL Draft. During his first 2 years, he was limited to a blocking role because that is what he thrived as, and he couldn't really show off what he could do in the passing game. Until the last couple years where in 2020 he put up 26 receptions on 29 targets and 207 receiving yards. And last year in 2021 where he was the most involved in the passing game as he's ever been with Miami, where statistically he increased in every single receiving category, with 34 receptions on 41 targets and 357 receiving yards. He has very secure hands as he'll never try and make some crazy catch, but whenever you get the ball to him, he'll probably catch it. And has done well when working in the underneath part of the field, and is a pretty good guy when you want him to trip and release or something like that. He's also not a dead man walking after he makes a catch, as he's improved his yards after catch ability throughout the years. But don't get me wrong, it's not like he's elite as a yak guy or anything like that. So while he has had to continually develop his game as a pass catcher, he's always been a very, very good blocker, which was his selling point coming out of college. He loves to do the dirty work type of stuff and basically played as an extra offensive lineman in college, which is why he was what he was and limited to that blocking role for the first 2 years of his NFL career. He's just a good blocker who needed to improve as a receiver, and he's done that. With him being a pretty solid blocker and him steadily improving in the passing game, he clearly fits what Mike McDaniel and John Embree likes to do with that tight end position. Because they know if a tight end can do what they ask of them as a blocker, they can then thrive as a pass catcher and then become a crucial part of this Mike McDaniel offense. Which brings us to the subject of this video, realistically, Mike Gesicki. Mike Gesicki has become a heavily discussed player during this year's training camp, and it's honestly for good reason. While training camp should always be taken with a grain of salt, and pretty much everything that I've said today should be taken with a grain of salt because it is somewhat based on training camp, and the fact that a lot of the stuff about tight ends has been relatively hidden from news reports and Twitter, whatever you can find. Whatever you can say, there hasn't been much reporting or that much in-depth reporting on this tight end group, but based on the limited things that we have seen and the things that have been reported, it has become a very concerning situation for Mike Gesicki and for his future with this Miami Dolphins team. You guys should know who Mike Gesicki is as a player, but just to give a little bit of context, he was also drafted in the 2018 NFL draft, just a little bit earlier than Durham Smythe, where he was drafted in the second round with the 42nd overall pick.
With the 42nd pick in the 2018 NFL draft, the Miami Dolphins select Mike Gesicki, tight end, Penn State.
He's a Penn State alum, and he went crazy in college, and he actually holds the record for most receiving yards in Penn State history for a tight end. So yeah, he was incredible in college, and that was the reason he was drafted so high in that draft. There's really no reason to go further than that with the scouting report on Mike Gesicki as a player, as he's relatively stayed the same in terms of how he's played since college. He's remained largely the same type of player, but that's not to say he hasn't improved at all. It's just that he hasn't diversified his talents as of yet. So as I'm pretty sure you guys already know, Mike Gesicki is an elite pass catching receiver. He's pretty quick and has good speed for his size and is one of the best contested catch guys in the entire NFL. The issue for him in the receiving game is his run after catch and his ability to run routes. But fortunately for him, his speed and his catch range makes up for that stuff. The major, and I mean major, issue with his game is his ability or lack of ability to block. It's awful. It's just really, really bad. When Adam Gase was the head coach back in 2018 during Mike Gesicki's rookie year, I'm pretty sure he tried to have him block like every fifth play or something, and Mike Gesicki really wasn't having any of it. That might not be the best way to put it, but basically he struggled, and he struggled heavily in that role, and that was probably a combination of, one, Mike Gesicki probably not wanting to, which is fine, but also poor coaching, so it was probably a combination of that. But after that rookie year in 2018, when Adam Gase was fired and Brian Flores was hired, they pretty much let that part of his game go. They didn't even try to make him block or even put him in line for that matter, and let him do what he's elite at, which is being a receiver and playing him as a big slot, so he never really had to put his hand in the dirt, and he pretty much played as a big slot receiver, which is what he was and kind of what he is. He's a wide receiver stuck in a tight end's body and position. The issue here is with the hiring of Mike McDaniel and the implementation of his offensive scheme is that it does not match or even mesh well with Mike Gesicki's play style at all. In Mike McDaniel's wide zone system, it's imperative that a tight end knows how to block and do it well. Not to mention, this entire situation is even more precarious based on the fact that Mike Gesicki is playing on a franchise tag for this year. Basically, for Mike Gesicki to be able to be successful in this offense, he's going to have to learn how to block and block well enough that they can at least get him on the field so they can use his pass catching ability, which who knows if he can even get to that point, as I haven't been able to be there personally at camp. But I know the people that have been there, I've seen him running with the 2s and the 3s, which is interesting because we don't really know why that is. Is it because he's fallen down the depth chart, or is it so that he can just practice his blocking against inferior talent to try and develop that part of his game? For me, it's tough to say, at least for this point in time as of right now, but it just doesn't seem like he'll be a major factor in this offense's future, which is unfortunate. And as I mentioned before, he needs a new contract after this year, so will the Dolphins be the ones to sign it? For me, it might make sense to have him play this year out on the franchise tag and see if he can become a good enough blocker to play in this offense where he can get a good and well-paid contract from the Miami Dolphins, as at that point he would be a truly all-around tight end where he can get his money. But if he doesn't do that, you're pretty much left with the option to just let him go if he doesn't develop enough in the blocking scheme to warrant keeping him around. The issue with this scenario is that you're losing a quality asset in Mike Gesicki for nothing, but I guess sometimes that's just how it goes. At this point, we really don't know, and we'll just have to kind of wait and see. And who knows what Mike McDaniel is really thinking. Before we end the video, I just want to reiterate that I will be live on this YouTube channel tomorrow for our first preseason game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, so remember to be here for that if you're able. It'll be really fun and I'm really excited for it. And the best place to follow me for updates and stuff like that on the stream and anything else, and just to follow me, it's just a great place to follow me, to be honest, is on my Twitter, so definitely make sure to follow me there. You can find that link in the description. And with that being said, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. What are we going to do with Mike Gesicki?